Hi, guys. Welcome back to The Baseline. Thanks for joining me again today. Today, we're going to talk about when settlers attack the state and Israel's Frankenstein moment. So, hey, everybody. Thanks again. Let me hit you with a question. And in this question, it should make you sit straight up. Because what happens when the people you've armed, funded, protected for decades, they suddenly turn around and they end up attacking you? What happens when your so-called chosen protectors become the biggest threat to your own army? And what happens when the monster you fed for years finally breaks off the leash and bites? Because that's what's happening. So yeah, stick around. It's happening in Israel right now. And it's just not another headline about Middle East violence or madness. It's a living, breathing case study in what happens when an ideology eats itself alive, and it's happening in real time. So welcome to The Baseline, guys, again. And I'm glad you're here. And I'm so excited to run this through you and get your guys' opinion on what you think is going on with this. But let me explain it to you. Let's get into it. And then you guys give me your opinion, all right? And so today we have a monster with no leash. Let me give you the scene. Israel's settler movement, if you don't know, is a decades-old project. And the short version is the Israeli government has for years told tens of thousands of its own citizens, go out there, build on this land, even if it's disputed. Don't worry, we got you, we got your back. Free land, tax breaks, soldiers guarding the outposts, courts looking the other way, perks for pioneers, everyone. Except some of these pioneers didn't just build houses and plant vineyards. They also torched olive groves, bulldozed homes, and yes, they terrorized entire Palestinian villages with near total immunity. And guess what? The state turned a blind eye because the settlers are politically very powerful and extremely useful to every right-wing government that wanted to say, look, this is our land forever. But here's where the monster grows teeth. When you tell a generation of people they're doing God's work, that the law is optional for them, that violence is fine when it's aimed at others. But don't be surprised when they decide the rules don't apply to you either. And last week, that's exactly what happened in Israel. The settlers, they turned on the state. Now, I don't know if you caught the story or not, but it didn't even lead on CNN, which I don't know if it's surprising or not, but we're talking about radical groups like the infamous Hilltop Youth turned their rage not just on Palestinians, but on the very army that's been protecting them for decades, the IDF. So picture this, guys. Dozens of radical settlers stormed a closed Israeli military base north of Ramlah. They torched the military vehicles, they spray painted hateful graffiti, and they pepper sprayed Israeli soldiers. One battalion commander got jumped, beaten up, called a traitor straight to his face. Now, stop for a second. These kids, radicalized since they could walk, decided they'd had enough of being told no by their own army. And that's not some rumor from a blog. That's been reported by Euronews, PBS, credible outlets. Look it up. Fact check me. Let me know if I'm wrong. But why did they flip out? Because the IDF, for once, tried to restrain settler violence against Palestinians in the West Bank, tried to stop them from torching another village. And that little tiny attempt at accountability, that was the final straw for them. The monster didn't like the leash. So, hey, if you think this sounds like something the world should be paying attention to, I think you're right. It's a really interesting case study. The case study of the Frankenstein state, right? I want to see how many of you think this is insane because it seems crazy, right? But let's try to back up a bit. The roots that lit this fuse. Who are these Hilltop Youth? Imagine ultra-nationalist, ultra-religious young settlers who think even the Israeli government is too soft. They draw inspiration from Mir Khan, the guy whose party was so racist, Israel banned it decades ago. They think the West Bank, all of it, is there by divine right. And they'll fight anyone, Arab, soldier, politician, anyone who says otherwise. And when they torch a Palestinian village, they call it price tag, payback, revenge, biblical justice. But when the army steps in, suddenly the IDF, Israelis' pride, is now the enemy. It's wild. It's also not random, because for decades, Israel's leadership courted these settlers for votes, subsidies, legal covers, soldiers deployed like personal security guards. Even the far-right ministers, people like Ben Gvir, built careers egging them on. And now the same Ben Gvir is calling them Jewish terrorists, which is rich coming from a guy once convicted of inciting hate himself. The hypocrisy is enough, to make your neck kind of cramp from all the whiplash and turning around for all the doublespeak. But what are the real consequences of all of this? What does this all really mean? So if we were to get real for just a moment, it means the state of Israel, which has justified decades of occupation in the name of security, is now under attack by its own Frankenstein's monster. It means the idea that settlers protect Israel has flipped now, because now Israel has to protect itself from the settlers. And it means the Palestinians, who've always been the target of this violence, are now watching two bullies fight over the same stick. Now, if you're wondering if this means Palestinians get a break, sorry, they don't. If anything, this split makes their daily lives more dangerous than ever. When settlers want to prove a point, they double down on the people with the least power. And when the IDF wants to reassert control, they'll do it on both fronts. And that's the nightmare. And it's playing out in real time right in front of us. So what's the big contradiction here? Let's try to step back and name this contradiction. Israeli leadership. Benjamin Netanyahu in particular has always depended on settlers for power. They are a reliable voting bloc. They're organized, they're passionate. But here's the thing. You can't feed a beast with absolute immunity and then expect it to bow when you say enough. Netanyahu now calls the attacks unacceptable. Ben Gvir calls it a red line. And the defense minister, Israel Katz, scrambles emergency meetings. Now, here's the thing. The same leaders that have legalized settlements, they've also expanded them. They've looked the other way when settlers destroy Palestinian homes. They're fine with that lawlessness until it hit them. And that's the rot at the heart of this story, which brings us to these uncomfortable truths. Now, if we could box this up with three truths that should bother anyone who gives a damn about human rights, is one, the settler movement was never just defensive. It's a colonial project, plain and simple. Take land, hold land, expand land. Security was the excuse. Expansion was the point. Number two, extremists don't stop when you say good job. Give them a taste of impunity, they'll want the whole buffet. Settler violence isn't a glitch. It's the system. It's in the system. It is the system. And number three, the real victims are always the powerless, the people who can't fight for themselves. Palestinian families who lose homes, olive groves, kids, they don't get emergency cabinet meetings. No one's helping these guys. They get bulldozers and silence. So it reminds me like raising a kid who never hears the word no. You give this kid candy for breakfast give him candy for lunch, you give him candy for dinner. And then you bail him out when he starts trouble and he sets fire to their neighbor's shed. And then you end up blaming the neighbor and said, oh, it's the neighbor's fault. Then one day he sets your house on fire and you act shocked like, oh my gosh, how could he have done this? But sorry, you built that pyromaniac. So what happens next? So what does Israel do now? Do they crack down? Do they risk a settler uprising? Do they lose those crucial votes? Do they look the other way? Let the army keep taking hits from radicals? I don't know. I don't think there's any option that's pretty here. And Netanyahu, who's juggling a corruption trial and a fractured coalition, is doing what he does best, buying time and stoking fear of Iran to distract everyone. But here's the kicker. You can bomb Iran, you can flatten Gaza, but you can't bomb a problem you nurtured inside your own backyard. That's a different fight. It's a different type of problem. So comes the real question. And the question is, why should it matter to you? And you might be thinking that, okay, I'm not Israeli, I'm not Palestinian. Why should I care about this at all? Well, you should care because this is what happens when unchecked power runs wild anywhere. It's not about the Middle East alone. It's about what happens when governments say, hey, here's your immunity slip. Let's go break things. It's about how the stories we're told, security, freedom, safety, get flipped when the monster starts eating its maker. Now, if it can happen there, it can happen anywhere. It can happen here in the United States. We're not immune from anything either. So here's my challenge, guys. Don't look away. Next time someone says it's complicated, remember that some things aren't. Violence is violence. That's not complicated. Hypocrisy is hypocrisy. There's no complication in that. And monsters don't stay on leashes forever. So I appreciate you guys watching The Baseline. Let me know what you guys think. Fact check me. Tell me if you think I'm wrong. We only succeed when we help each other see more clearly and think more deeply, act more with critical thought together. And I think we can help each other do that. So we'll catch you on the next episode on The Baseline. I really appreciate you guys watching, and cheers, everybody.